You heard the lady. Let's get down to some work here. Let's get down to, first of all, answering a few frequently asked questions. This is a bit redundant if you've seen the third intro video. Maybe several of you have. But if this is new to you, I hope it is. I want to answer why this book, why Vietnam, the Vietnam War, and why are we studying history in an English class? So let's start with this. Why are we reading a history book in English composition? Well, the nature of freshman composition has always been the same. The proposal to you and the burden put on students is writing about other people's writing. And that's what we're trying to do here. Now, in the past, it used to be that there was more variety in what we read. For instance, in the past, I have taught Shakespeare and poetry and novels. Novels are long works of fiction, you know, like Alice in Wonderland or Twilight. You know, there are no real vampires in the world, but Twilight is a novel about vampires. And I used to be able to teach things like novels in my writing classes. But the way we organize the course has changed as we discovered students are in need of more particular skills. They need to be reading books that reflect how academic writing plays out, how academic writing works. And nobody reads a Shakespeare play in a class and turns around and writes a play in response. No, you need to write critical academic essays and demonstrate your critical thinking. But what you're reading should be a lot like what you're asked to reproduce. So I don't want to give you poetry like I used to do. I want you to have actual academic writing. And that's what Marilyn Young is. All right, so in traditional freshman composition, the readings would have been any number of things, but we are now moving to this particular book because it reflects how I want you to write, particularly how I want you to paragraph and develop. In part, why this book? Because it is a paper copy that you can make your own. The key here is, of course, the creation of a media device that is useful to you. This book is a media device, and it must be covered with your writings, with your annotations. It is, if you do it correctly, it becomes your go-to source. If somebody has a question about Marilyn Young or the Vietnam War or President Johnson, that you'd be able to open that book or the related notebook and answer that question. That's what we're after here. Now, you could do this online in a PDF, in an ebook. We want to emphasize that that is an option that's available, but in this case, we want to use the paper copies. They're just a very simple and direct media device. So there's part of your answer. This book is a metacognitive media device. It reflects your understanding and helps you develop your critical thinking skills. It fills in the blanks when there's definitions or a famous name. You're asked to fill in the blanks. So you'll use your tools, a highlighter, a pen, a notebook, and write all over the book and write all over your notebook to make this book sensible to you. Parts of it will be sensible right off the bat. Parts of it will not be. Parts of it will be sort of confusing off the bat. All students encounter this. What do? You take notes to help you figure out what the gaps in your knowledge and understanding are. What we're after here is the kind of reading that helps our writing. And as we write, it'll help our reading. This is what we call metacognitive, that approaches to reading help approaches to writing and vice versa, metacognition. And we're going to be modeling 3 issues with this book. The first 3 are qualities that we need, and Marilyn Young demonstrates them continuously. The first quality is unity, that she sticks to her point of view. She doesn't behave like a reporter, she behaves like an academic writer. Reporters, generally speaking, are out there to get all sides of an issue. Academic writers defend a particular side of an argument. Okay, they take an interpretation and they defend that interpretation through and through. They're not interested in, on the other hand, kind of statements. So the first quality is unity. The second quality is coherence. That is sentence by sentence flow. And Young performs coherence beautifully, sentence by sentence. Sentence 3 in a paragraph on page 320 is going to lead nicely to sentence 4 in that same paragraph. That's what we mean by coherence. And the final issue is development, which is the balance between the specific and the general. And we want to be balancing this out. We want to generalize when it's important to provide our opinion, which is what opinions are, generalities. But we always want to back up our generalities with specific data that supports our point of view. This is what Marilyn Young does continuously. And she provides a model for that very same thing. The page is there. Oh, and the fourth thing that is really emphatic and clear in our in choosing Young's book. The other thing that we want to keep in mind here about Young's book is that this book is a product of like a good college paper. It's synthesized. The name on the cover is Marilyn Young, but Marilyn Young isn't the only person in this book. Marilyn Young quotes outsiders on page, let's just say page 119. There is a long indented paragraph by someone in, I believe this is, yes, this is a Senate passed law called the Tonkin Gulf Resolution. We'll be discussing this in detail, okay? But this is a quote from a law. So Young didn't write the law. We need to see that she synthesized her material so that, like a good researcher, she's going outward, she's reaching outward. She has her opinions, but her opinions are based on outward data, outside data. She collects that data and synthesizes it so it's smoothly connected to other data. She's going to quote the Senate, then she'll turn around and quote the president, then she'll turn around and quote a newspaper article, then she'll turn around and quote a television reporter, all the while synthesizing and clarifying who's talking, where she got it, its relevance, its context, so on and so forth. So synthesis is another issue that Young clearly demonstrates. She smoothly moves and patches together reporting and laws and speeches from other people. That's her name on the cover, but the book contains multitudes, as we would say. All right, let's take a short break here. I've got things to check. I want to make sure we've got emails. I may have been getting emails from students asking why they're not getting their Zoom calls. We'll see what's going on. But we are on a short break. I'm sorry, we're kind of chopped up and we'll start and stop this morning. As much as I dislike doing that, I usually like to have a smooth rollout of a class. This is not going to be smooth, I can already tell. And my apologies for that. Anyway, we'll take 10 minutes, and then when I come back, I want to talk about why this war is worth studying in an English class, okay? 10 minutes. So we'll see you at, let's see you at 8:30. 8:30. 8:30. Oh. Yeah. Oh, how it is called. Okay. Okay, so back at it here. Let me talk a little bit about why we're reading about Vietnam. Well, on a very personal level, I have found that it's a fascinating story with a lot of crazy details. And you can't really look away from it. It is darkness and tragedy that we are studying here when we look at this war. The fact that we don't remember it correctly or in tune with the facts of the age, the fact that history is, that this war is either forgotten or misremembered, further drives home its value in terms of lessons. Lessons about thinking, lessons about history, lessons about academic life, because it's the kind of thing you study. When you get to a certain level, say your junior, senior year, which is traditionally known as upper division undergraduate, we're going to find that we are studying very specific incidents. I took an upper division class in the French Revolution, and that's all we talked about the entire time. We didn't really get into the American Revolution or any other revolution, the Haitian Revolution, just about the French Revolution. And that was an upper division history class. Once you're at that upper division level, you're going to be doing a lot of this thing, what we're doing with the Vietnam Wars book. Calling attention to just small documents, small reading assignments, documentaries, and the like. There's a couple of other reasons we're using Vietnam here more generally, and this book specifically. I like the idea that we want to study failure. We are so good about studying, I'll pause to summarize. We're so good about studying success and taking the lessons of success and patting ourselves on the back that we are receiving ways of being successful at life or work or whatever it is. Yet stories of failure can be quite illuminating, because the old cliche goes, failure is the product of many hands. To screw up in this tragic and awful way, as the United States did during this war, to script in this way takes a lot of people. Takes a lot of people lying to themselves and lying to others. And that's partly what we're doing here. When we study this war, as much as we're studying the facts, we're studying people's thinking. How did people think about the world in such a way that it seemed like a good winning idea to kill 3.5 to 4 million Southeast Asians and 60,000 American 19-year-olds? How did people think about this war that justified these actions? So as much as we are studying a war, we're studying how people think in crisis, under pressure, when there's demand, when the stakes are high. You're studying decision-making as much as a war. You're studying thinking as much as a war. And again, we could be studying interpretations of history, but that wouldn't, we could be studying interpretations of Shakespeare, but that wouldn't help you write the way academically you're supposed to write, with unity, coherence, and development, and synthesis. We'll be getting into those categories very heavily over the next few weeks. Look, here's another reason why we're thinking about this book and why Vietnam, why this war. If you look at our student learning outcomes on the syllabus, it mentions that you're supposed to be able to do research, that you're supposed to be able to write an MLA. It mentions it's 4 total items on that list of student learning outcomes. And on that list, at no point does it say what kind of reading is required, what kind of research is required. So we want to be recognizing that the course learning outcomes, the student learning outcomes here, don't recognize anything other than reading and reading about general topics, okay? And that's another reason we are here for this. Yeah, and this is a story of failure. It's very complicated. It's about, it denies and defies moral simplicity. We did terrible things, but for important and moral reasons. The other side did the same thing in many ways. They had what they wanted, their goals, their lives, and so on and so forth. And they put themselves out there to fight. In terms of failure, again, we want to see failure. We want to be able to learn from failure. Anybody can learn from how Apple became a major company or how IBM became a major company. And those success stories are inspiring and powerful. But there are different ways of being inspired. We can also be inspired in the negative. We want to avoid this sort of bureaucratic error that you're about to encounter in these lead up and in the lead up to and the accomplishment of this war. So we want to study this war because it's still happening. Here's another reason. Why Vietnam? Because it's written all over our pop culture. It's in our movies. It's in the music that we remember. And we have reduced the visibility of the war to lies about what happened or forgetting that it happened. These are two major problems of history on the surface, that many times we are lied to about what occurs, and other times what occurred is obscured from us, hidden from us. And it's a fascinating topic. It opens up all kinds of interesting ways of thinking about ourselves, about the world, about success and failure, about working with others and developing a plan. All of these things are going to come up in this war, in this book, and you're going to see how it leads to tragedy, not success, tragedy. The success here is not on American terms. We can see success on Vietnamese terms. Vietnam had been colonized by the United States for a period of time from 1945 to roughly 1975. And lost my train of thought. I hate it when I do that. That means I need to have another sip of coffee here. Yeah, so look, we want to remember what's misremembered and remember what's obscured. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing Vietnam as a subject. It's all over your world. It's just written into the text in such a way that you don't really recognize it. Look, it should have been written into the world. Yeah, go ahead.
There's still a lot of veterans out there. I know a lot. I work for a couple, though. There's still survivors of that war.
There sure are. Those would be people in their 60s and 70s. People who either fought there, veterans, people who had to make decisions because they were drafted. This war is all around us. Talk to anybody over the age of 60 or 65, and they'll tell you about their experience with this war. Maybe they were protesting it. Maybe they got drafted. Maybe they figured out a way to not get drafted. Drafted means that they call your number, you got to report and go to war. That's what that means. And everybody over the age of 60, 65, that is male, had to deal with this fact of life. Yeah, absolutely. That's Aaron. Aaron, this is the kind of experience that just drives us home. This war is not that foreign to us.
I
It's
know
built
like
into our culture.
at least 8 veterans, and my boss is one.
That's fantastic. Um, uh, if you look, I used to do a paper right off the bat of how's your family involved, or how's your circle of friends or community involved in this war. And it involves students going around and asking their uncles and all the 65-year-old plus people they know about what they did during the war. And it produced okay papers. I wanted to be more text-based on our first paper. So your first paper, I can tell you what the subject is. The assignment will be posted later this week. It's going to be due next week. And it's totally based on the Young book. The question is, according to Young, why did the United States choose to support France when France reinvaded their colony of Vietnam after World War II? See, France was defeated by the Nazis in World War II until the United States and the Allies came together, as well as the French resistance, to free France. But there became this question, a question of history. In 1940, France controlled Vietnam. From 1940 to 1945, Japan invaded and controlled Vietnam. So who gets control of Vietnam starting in 1946? The Vietnamese people or the French? Well, the United States decided through a complicated bureaucratic set of decisions and indecisions in some way to support France's reinvasion of Vietnam. So your first essay is a 2-page essay. Why, according to Young, did the US support France's reinvasion of Vietnam after World War II? The answers are laid out there, multiple, and they're in the first 2 chapters.
I got up to page 16, and it is an interesting point where they talk about the fact that despite the United States history of being a colony, they didn't seem inclined to sympathize with Vietnam.
You've encountered one of the early ironies here. That is great, Aaron. Yeah, you're right. That even as the leader of communist Vietnam takes to a stage in a major Vietnamese city and reads out part of the U.S. Declaration of Independence and says, this is our path. We want what America got when it got away from Britain. We want to get away from France, the Vietnamese said. And they quoted our founding documents to do it. And as you read this chapter, you'll find out we worked together very closely with this group that would become our enemies. During World War II, we were on the side of the communists trying to defeat the Axis powers, Japan, Germany, Italy, so on and so forth. I always got to throw in Italy because I'm Italian, and it makes Italy seem important, even though it was really one of the reasons why Germany lost the war is because of the actions of Italy. But neither here nor there. Look, we were on the side and we were on the same side of communists trying to defeat fascism. And after the war, communism became our enemy. These folks who we worked with to fight the Japanese, we helped the Vietnamese freedom fighters during the war from 40 to 45 to fight the Japanese. They were on our side. We trained them, we paid them, we gave them weapons. And then after the war, we told them to go to hell. I'm sorry, that's essentially was the message, and you'll see that. So you're right. Aaron points out a key irony early on, and that is that we inspired the Vietnamese independence movement from France, and yet we reinstalled France as rulers of Vietnam. And it's fascinating. How does that kind of thing happen? How does that sort of decision making go from one side of the road to the other? How do we take friends and turn them into enemies? This is part of our story. Yeah, a little bit about the book too. I recognize you're going to find this. It's no great secret. The first couple of chapters, because they're diplomatic history of international relations, tend to be kind of boring and dry. The book really takes off when people start fighting on the ground. Every time there's fighting in this book, it juices up the text a lot. But the first couple of chapters are pretty dry, pretty boring. Diplomatic history tends to be that way. Bear with it. Just know who's who and what systems are in play and what happens. Just know that basic stuff in the first couple of chapters. And do expect it to be a little on the dry side. Make sure that you take a lot of notes. It will enliven it for you if you do that. Okay. Anything else I want to tell you about why Vietnam? Yeah, and as Aaron is pointing out, people are living this war on a daily basis. And there are tropes that we still use which help us recall the war in a controlled fashion, in a fashion that doesn't upset us. These are tropes that otherize this war, that makes it sort of like the thing that happened to other people. Tropes like veterans being suffering from Vietnam veterans suffering particularly from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. We have this thing about Vietnamese war veterans, where we tend to view this cliche, this stereotype, that if you fought over there, you must have PTSD. And I don't want to downplay that, because many people, I'm sure, as Aaron can attest, will have suffered PTSD. But not everybody did. But nonetheless, when we talk about it, we're obscuring just how many people didn't come back with PTSD, other complications of returning to the work world, the ordinary world, civilian life after the switch out of a war situation and no longer being a soldier. These are confusing things, and we reduce them to, well, the main problem they had was PTSD. Well, yeah, for a lot of people it was, but there are other complications too. We want to see too that there are tropes. Like I said, one trope is PTSD among veterans. Another is that we would have won this war, and we're going to be directly challenged on this one, if it hadn't been for American support for communism. That American communists helped win the war for the Vietnamese. And the media was in it too. This is the story that was told by Ronald Reagan and people who came into power after the war. This idea that we weren't allowed to win because the so-called liberals and the media prevented us from winning. You're going to hear some of this. You hear this on a daily basis when it's discussed. It's assumed that when Vietnam and the Vietnam War come up, that we're going to hear in a lot of ways about how the home front supported the Vietnamese communists, and therefore the good guys, us, the Americans, were undermined in our pursuits, in our pursuit of goodness and justice. But it didn't work that way. The facts of history are much more complicated than, oh, liberals in the media caused us to lose. It's much more complicated than that. Just the basic fact, let's start with one basic fact that you're not going to be able to get away from. At no point during this war were we ever even close to winning. So we need to take that into account when we start hearing about people, when we start hearing from people saying, oh, we could have won if. No, absolutely not. There's no way we could have won. How ridiculous is the idea that we could have won? Well, if you were following recently the HBO show Watchmen, or if you've read the graphic novel, you know that the way America wins in the Watchmen universe in Vietnam, and we win in Vietnam in the Watchmen TV show and graphic novels, was a superhero appeared and scared the hell out of the Vietnamese, and the Vietnamese quit fighting. A giant blue man, Dr.
Manhattan.
Yeah, right. So pop culture is kind of making fun of this idea. Well, we could have won if we'd had a superhero. You know, a lot of good that does us in reality, right? This is one.
I think additionally, for the Watchmen, they also played into that by making Vietnam a state.
Right, making the Vietnam the 51st state or whatever it is, right? Which, again, the more you study this, the more you realize, wow, that is what you might call alternative history. At no point was Vietnam going to become the 51st state, although it's interesting to imagine if it had been that way, right?
And so, Professor?
Yeah, right?
I wanted to mention, because you mentioned that like a lot of the time soldiers had problems with PTSD, that was compounded by, I think, the public opinion of that war was very poor, you know, the whole baby killers thing.
Right.
I think a lot of times soldiers did not come back to a welcome. They came back to a very negative perception of a war they didn't necessarily want to fight.
That's right. And you're going to hear a lot from such soldiers in our documentaries, and you probably know from your own personal experience here with your work that this is what people will explain, is that they came home from a war and didn't know how to explain what they were fighting for. They didn't know how to explain the good things that they did, the good intentions they had, and they certainly don't know how to explain the terrible things that they did. Not everybody did terrible things, but you're going to see plenty of people who did terrible, terrible things. You're going to hear from them too. Yeah. Yeah, Quinn.
I think that impacted even now, like the selective service system. You know, if you require student aid, you have to enroll in the selective service system, which is like a pre-selection for military enrollment, I believe.
Yes, that's the draft. If the draft ever comes back, it'll be because of that very thing. It'll be because of that very thing, is because of selective service, and you can't get, it used to be, and I'm sure it's probably still this way, they wouldn't have changed it. You couldn't get financial aid if you weren't signed up for the selective service.
It's still that way.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. They're going to take that away. So I think my senior class, when I turned 18, was the first class in 1980 that had to come back for the draft, because the end of the draft occurred in the Nixon administration in the early 70s, and it came back in 80, but not as a draft, but just as you had to register when you turned 18, as many of you already have. And that you wouldn't be able to get financial aid without it. So, let's see. I just muted all you. You can unmute yourself, Aaron. You're being quite productive and helping me out here. I appreciate it. Thank you. Mercy, how are you doing?
Good. I don't know. I just sent you an email because I'm currently at work, so I won't be able to stay for the meeting.
That's okay.
Okay, I just wanted to let you know. I didn't want to get marked like absent or anything.
All right, Mercy, let me point out a couple of things. First of all, a recording of today's lecture will be posted. A recording of today's lecture, us talking right here, will be posted at the Zoom conference link on Canvas under event recordings. I will put up a discussion post pointing people to this morning's lecture. So you can get this, as is asynchronous. You can get this anytime that's convenient for you, including when you've got work.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Yeah, we got a new flood of students. Fantastic. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, we had the 7:30 start, we had a 9 start. I'm looking at our schedule. Let's talk about schedule. And thinking that I'm going to start class I'd like to start class at 9, but I'm hearing people tell me that they're trusting it to start at 7:30. If I start at 7:30, I'll do what I'm doing right now, which means that I'll run it continuously for 4 hours. And essentially, it'll be 2 classes taught during one video Zoom conference. If I do the 7:30. If I do the 9 o'clock, I would just do the one recording. Sorry, I would just do the one class over that recording. I apologize, this is so confusing. You're not the only ones who are confused. Your teachers are confused too. And we're working this out. We are working on a daily basis to get everybody on the same page and the same schedule. I recognize that this class was listed at 7:30 on Tuesdays, Thursday. I have another one that's listed at, I think it's 8 a.m. on Friday mornings. That's a 1-day-a-week class. We'll go ahead and run this class on Thursday at 7:30 again. Next week, we'll work out, I'll do a survey question, a poll question in regards to what your preferred class time start for the live interaction is, although you can access all Zoom calls from ConferZoom on the Canvas page. Let me show you. You click on ConferZoom and you can see event recordings. There wouldn't be any event recordings right now because we're working on the one and only, but will be listed here, would be listed by date and name, the recordings of our Zoom calls. And so you don't need to be live for the Zoom calls. You can simply check in and consume it. Now, it takes you away from live interaction with me, with your instructor, and the ability to interact and ask questions and comment and all that good stuff that we need to learn and stay committed. But you can do this. I just finished up a summer course of English 1, and I had about 20 students finish, of which like 2 of them and 1 of them earned an A, I never saw live in a Zoom call. They experienced this class truly asynchronously. They experienced it on their time, working around their other work class. One more quick little note now that I see people here. Okay. All right, anyway. Make sure, let me give you this message and then we'll take a short break. I want to make sure everybody is getting the email blast. These email blasts that I'm sending around, sometimes calling you ELAC when you're LBCC, my apologies for the confusion. I just got a pile of confusion on this week, don't I? Those emails are going to be where you get your Zoom links sent to you, where you communicate with me during class. So make sure that Long Beach City College is updated on your email and that everything is forwarding to your main email account. The email address that Long Beach has, it's very important that that be up to date and something that you can access on a daily basis. So let's be aware of that. If you need to go to the registrar and change that, you can go ahead and do it. Do we have anybody this morning who's on the wait list? Turn off your microphone and let me know.
Well, I was on the wait list, but you said it show up today.
Yeah, Giovanni, did I send you an ad number yet?
No.
I have not. All right, so Giovanni, let me do that for you. You're on the wait list right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I emailed
okay.
you. You told me to just show up, that you wouldn't drop me.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not dropping you. You're good. You're totally good.
Okay.
I need to give you an ad number though. Can you take grab a pen and let me add you to this class by giving you an add number. So this is a 6-digit code that you will use. I'll write your name in for it. Martinez. Giovanni. And that number that you will need just for you, Giovanni, is 108499.
So it's 108499.
That is the number you need to use to add the course. You will need individual numbers. Anybody listening in going, oh, can I use that number? No, that is for Giovanni and Giovanni alone. Okay?
Okay.
If you need to be added, I will give you an add number. I gave out 3 add numbers this morning already. Giovanni's the 4th.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, not a problem. What else? What else? Well, let's take our break. We'll be back at, let's be back at 9:15, give it about 10 minutes. At 9:15, we'll continue our discussion. We've covered why this particular book. We talked a little bit about why we're studying a war. And now I want to talk about why we're studying history. At 9:15, I'll talk about why we're studying history in an English course, okay? Back in 10. Make sure you take the poll. Guys, take that poll. Please do that. We're still on break here for a few minutes.
Swear with a remix. Anytime Marco. The whole rhythm. Easy instruction. 8 drops, 15 bar. So you can say, They wanna know how I'm so high with that beat to this system. If it ain't right, I'll say this then. The truck on who got them the properties and calls to the Christian. You're not giving in the distance. My CD goes out in an instant. I'm giving everybody and talk in the distance. Yeah, they to the distance. Now about to blow up. Cheesy music. Only your mind and heart in the distance. I'm real when I talk to the infant. Fuck with me, people to the distance. Funny family, try to text me, I laugh instead. Just so like sheep. Come on, keep the vibe going. When you get a full ball shot, on six, every lane the crowd like this. I didn't get rolled off that like listen, let's get ready. When you get a full shot, then go back to first lane.
And we are back. Does anybody want to unmute and ask any questions that we need to clarify? Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away, or jump into chat. I'm answering a couple of questions on chat. Don't forget to turn on your chat window. That's under more. So in this morning's Zoom, which we started at 7:30, we've discussed already why we're picking this book. We just discussed why Vietnam, why we're studying Vietnam. And now I want to get into this more general question of why are we studying history in an English course? Well, it's all college. And like any college major or course, the emphasis is on critical thinking. Look, college, if it does anything, I'll speak bluntly, if it does anything, college should make us immune to bullshit, right? It's what we really, really want. Yes, we want to be trained to do some, maybe we would want to be trained to do some practical job. You know, you can come in here and get an associate's degree in accounting. Or you can do admin of justice and head off to the police force. But beyond the training aspect of college, there is also this aspect of college where we're asked to think about things that are difficult to think about, including history. Now, history is just one academic department that demands the kind of critical thinking that we need to see here. I could be asking you to critically think in an English course about Shakespeare. I'm asking you to instead to critically think about this particular piece of writing, okay? So why history? Well, because it's fascinating, although at times it can be boring and difficult. I want to say that one of the reasons why I'm not I recognize that students have a problem when they see, oh, this is a history course. It's because the kind of history you've had has been history in high school, and high school history is very different than college history. High school history studies facts. College history, university history, studies thinking, historical thinking. We are of course studying who did what. Why did we invade why did we invade Vietnam? We're of course studying that, but we're more studying here the way people thought about about their decisions, how they came to their decisions, what limits they found on their power to make decisions. All of these are issues that we find when we're talking about college history. Whereas high school history was learn the name of a great man, usually a white dude, and then celebrate what that dude did. I can't think of a more boring way of teaching history. We don't only study actions, we study thinking. In fact, the core asset of historical thinking as critical thinking is that it demands of us to sort out what's real and what's bullshit. And so this is an excellent set of habits to get into, whether your major is sociology or administration of justice, nursing, biology, no matter what you're learning, you will need critical thinking, the kind of critical thinking we will continuously demonstrate throughout this course. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'm just seeing a couple of things here. Okay. So if we're talking about why history, let me clarify one more thing then. What do you need to get started here? What does it take to read Young? Well, you're never really going to know until you get Young into your hands. So first word, get Young, order Young. the early part of this video, I went and I searched Google Shopping for this materials, and you can see it there. It is the book that's the Vietnam War is plural, and you can see men running along the top over the title of the book. In the syllabus, it contains all of the other information that can help you identify the book, but it's this one here that you see laid out here. Use a syllabus to make sure you got the exact right one using the ISBN number that's included on the syllabus. It will match. No matter where you order it from, that ISBN number is the general information number that you can see at the bottom of the book under the Universal Product Code, the UPC.
I feel like it's a good book. It's, to me, it's a very understandable.
Yeah,
it's accessible.
I profoundly appreciate that, Aaron, because I know these first couple of chapters will be boring for a lot of people because they're diplomatic history. Once the war gets undertaken, starts in about chapters 3 or 4, it gets really interesting. And there are so many twists and turns in this story that it will keep you on the edge of your seat if you're paying attention. So we'll want to notice that. So what do you need to know to get started? Well, all you got to know is who won World War II and how they did it. With the United States and its allies defeated Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. You know that. That's part of our culture. It still comes up every day. Pearl Harbor, and the nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. All of this stuff is built into you. If I say Hiroshima, you know, oh, that's World War II. That's the end of World War II. That's when we dropped the bomb. If you've got that much historical knowledge, you can learn on, you can build on that base. The first complication I will add is that our enemies in the Cold War, the communists, were on our side at the end of World War II. It didn't start that way. Early on in World War II, before the real fighting got started, Russia and Nazi Germany were on the same page, dividing up Europe willy-nilly, and then Germany attacked Russia, at which point Russia switched sides and became anti-German Nazi. And they were on our side from 1940 to 1945, helping to defeat the Nazis, rolling through Eastern Europe all the way to Berlin. And they were at Hitler's door at the end of the war when he committed suicide. I like all the good vibes I'm seeing in the group chat. Thanks so much, guys. Good stuff. Anyway, that's all you really need to know, is that we won, the Russians were on our side, but became our enemies. The rest will fill itself in. Be aware the first couple of chapters are diplomatic history and not very exciting. The war will start in chapters 3 and 4, and it becomes much more grounded in things you can see and feel and hear. Very big, important stuff. On a more personal note, I never know how to go deeply into this, but why do I study history? Why did I become a history major with a minor in English literature at UCLA? My master's is in English. Why did I become a history major? Well, a lot of it had to do with parallels I saw between the breakdown of memory and the breakdown of history. On a personal note, I first encountered how weird memory worked, and it got me to thinking about how weird history worked. My mother passed away when I was 15. And of course, at 15, this was a traumatic event. She passed away suddenly. And of course, there was a funeral and there was a wake. And at 15, I sat and I watched people describe my mother and explain what my mother meant to them. And most of the time, I felt a great deal of pride and sorrow at my loss, that she was gone. But occasionally somebody would step up and say something to me or into a microphone or to the crowd, the congregation at the funeral or the wake, the celebrants, someone would step up and say something that just didn't ring true to me. My mom spanked me a few times, and I remember that. And nobody else remembered that. Nobody else remembered all the other problems I was seeing live in my household. Yet during the wake, during the funeral, all I heard was one side of my mom's story. And it got me to thinking, if this is the way human memory works, what about the broad, more social version of memory we call history? Remember now, history is an accounting of how people perceive events over time. History is not a lineup, a chronology of events. History is accounting for what human beings have noticed over time. There are two major problems with history that we always run up against. I saw it at my family's funeral, and I saw it on the personal dimension of memory. But history has these problems too. The first historical problem I'd like to point out is what we do not notice, what goes unnoticed, the things that happened in the past that people have forgotten happened. So there is materials about our past that escape our notice, sometimes because of the texts that let us know what was going on. For instance, we can talk about the Roman system of slavery and how that worked, and how slaves were bought and sold, how slaves earned their freedom and all that stuff. But there's something interesting about our sources for building that knowledge. And that's what's interesting to me about that is everything we know about Roman slavery was written by the masters of those slaves. Of course, slaves weren't trained to write, weren't allowed to write. If they did write things down, it was probably taken from them. This is kind of a detriment for studying Roman slavery. We don't hear the slaves. Well, we find similar problems in our Vietnam War book, as you will see. The other issue besides what we don't notice, is what we lie about, what we grow nostalgic about. Nostalgia is a kind of social disease. It turns the past into simple morality plays, even when the lessons that were learned were hard and difficult. When we speak of the 1950s in the Leave It to Beaver and Happy Days kind of way, we think of the 50s as a remarkably peaceful time with lots of happy people in the suburbs raising their children and so on and so forth, with rock and roll on the radio, and the economy was booming. And we can remember the 1950s in that general way, but if we're remembering it in that way, we're lying about it. See, the 1950s were the height of what's called Jim Crow, just for instance. So while I, as a white person, may be sitting there going, oh, the 50s look great, assuming, of course, my whiteness there, I'm ignoring just how hard it was for the non-white people out there, for gay people who were in the closet, for anybody who was closeted, for anybody who didn't meet the social expectations. So we must fight, and this is what history does, we must fight lies, generalizations about the past that don't hold up. It is a generalization to believe, for instance, as we have pointed out earlier, that we could have won this war if we had made a different decision at X point or Y point. That's not true. That's a lie. That's nostalgia. At no point were we going to win. And this is Jung's consensus view. So yeah, we're at war here with what we haven't noticed about the past, as well as what we lie about with the past. We are also looking at history, particularly the Vietnam War history, because it's got fantastic documentary footage. Because of the way the war was covered by the media, at the time, we end up with all of this amazing, sometimes frightening and horrifying footage of the war. During the Vietnam War, journalists wandered freely through Vietnam, through the countries and cities, collecting their own information, filing their own reports. This would be the first and only war where that was allowed. In World War II, as well as in Iraq and Afghanistan, soldiers are, reporters, journalists are now assigned to units. Excuse me. And as they're assigned to units, they only get one side of the story, right? So we want to see some amazing live footage. This footage is traumatic at times. One of the reasons we give you a heads up warning in the syllabus about our materials is that it's very adult stuff. It tends to be brutal. There will be at least one or two occasions, it seems like in every documentary, where I have to tell people, look, what you're about to see is horrifying. If you can't handle it, please turn off your camera or turn away. I'll let you know when you come back on. I'll let you know when to turn back on. So that's another reason we're doing this, is look, it's amazing looking. What you're going to see here is just mind-blowing. Okay, what else?
I think Ken Burns was an influential documentary maker of the Vietnam War.
He sure was, Aaron. Yeah, we're going to see some of that Ken Burns documentary. We'll also see a documentary, a lot of footage. Yeah, the Vietnam War by Burns came through about 2 years ago. We've got an older Vietnam documentary called Vietnam, A Television History from 1983 that we use quite a bit. We'll be talking about that as well, and seeing that as well. Again, cameras were rolling, pictures were taken, words were written down and recorded. It's astonishing what you're about to see. And for many of us, we don't care about this to start with. One of the lessons that's listed on the first how-tos, I have a list of how-tos on the syllabus on the first page. And one of those how-tos that this class will drive home is how to handle a class that you initially don't care about. And I point out in one of the introduction videos that you have to trust yourself here. This is going to happen to you a lot in college, well, a few times in college. You'll end up in a course where you don't have a real strong feeling for the materials. All right, there are two ways of adjusting to this truth, that you don't really have a feel for the material that's being taught. One is that doing well can begin with liking your subject and jumping right in. We're used to the idea that when we like something at the beginning, it's easier to follow through, because that's true. But we also want to recognize the importance of an energy that is generated by paying attention. By paying attention to Jung's book, you will start to care. You don't have to care about Jung's book to begin it, to appreciate it. But if you're paying attention, what you're going to be doing here is getting yourself engrossed in what is an amazing freaking story. This is an amazing story. And so we've got that going for us. That's one of your how-tos, how to handle a class where you don't really care about the subject. You know, and that happened to me a few times in college as an undergraduate. I had to take physical sciences, so I took like astronomy. And the first week was like really dry. And then suddenly I started paying more attention to what we were asked to read. And in paying attention to what we were asked to read, I started to care about the subject. They came sort of horse before the cart for me in my expectations. I expected, well, I got to care first, then I'll be able to do it. No, sometimes you pay attention to something and it will make you care. Be aware of this. This goes on in life, not just in class. Okay, So I'm gonna wrap up today. On Thursday, we will send out a Zoom alert at 7:30. And we will run a long 4-hour session there. All sessions, Zoom sessions, are posted under event recordings under Zoom. So please be aware of that. If you're not getting this live at 7:30, if you came in at 9, there's probably about 45 minutes to an hour worth of material that happened before you came on. Not too much. You can fast forward through the dead spots when I took a break. I think there were 2 short breaks. But yeah, well, on Thursday, Zoom meeting starts at 7:30. Come in when you're ready. If you're coming in at 9, that's cool. We'll be talking about the writing process, how to write a paper. That's one of those how-tos on the first page of the syllabus. How to write a paper. What is the best method for answering a teacher's question and optimizing your grades? That's a huge deal, and that's what we'll start talking about on Thursday. Additionally, on Thursday, we'll talk a little bit more about the early years of the war. I'll show you some Cold War documentary to help you sort of catch up on what the Cold War was, because it's generally understood that the Vietnam War was a sort of a sideshow for the overall larger conflict between America, Communist Russia, and Communist China. So that is, I guess, what we're going to wrap up on today. I will let this run, but you are free to go as of now. Somebody has asked a question. I do not need your cameras on. It is, as an email pointed out yesterday, that was sent for all the LBCC staff and faculty. It's ableist, it's discriminatory to require people to have their phones on. Our survey, don't forget to take this survey, indicates that it's not going to work because a lot of people are sharing a room at home or in a public place. So it would be discriminatory if I required a camera turned on. Just turn off and on your microphone when you have questions. That's the way we will work this. No camera required. All right, guys. So that's it for this morning. I'll let the Zoom call run. You are free to excuse yourself. Thank you so much for a good first class. I'm sorry this was all a little crazy. I'm sorry if it was I'm sorry if it was a little confusing. It's gonna be, that's the way we are. Thank you, COVID. And we will continue on Thursday at 7:30. Oh, a question came up before I go, before you go. What about rules for writers, 8th or 9th? Either one is fine. 8th or 9th edition of rules for writers. They're very similar. There's a few variations in the MLA format, but nothing major. So if you get your hands on, you can rent it. I would urge you to rent it. Rules for Writers, either the 8th or the 9th edition, you're good. And that book, if you were to decide to buy it, would be useful to you writing across the curriculum, in your social class, in your psych class, in your admin of justice class, so on and so forth. Rules for Writers helps you write. The survey should be located under polling. Yes, this Metzli, there is an updated APA in there as well, for those of you hard science types. Great.
Professor, I have a question if you're still taking.
Sure, Aaron.
You mentioned that there's going to be an essay. Is that open this week, or is that going to be planned for the coming weeks?
I will open it up this week, and it will be due Saturday the 5th at, the 5th at midnight.
Okay, is that going to be like our deadline day for most of that stuff?
That will be the deadline. We want to get it in Saturday the 5th by midnight. I will go ahead and send that around.
Okay.
In fact, look under the assignment tab under your on the Canvas page.
Okay.
I haven't
it'll be on
gotten to it.
Canvas.
There's nothing there right now, but it'll be under assignment tab.
Okay.
Okay.
We should get alerted when stuff is posted.
Oh yeah, you get that alert. I also send out announcements about it.
And I just wanted to mention for everyone, I think a lot of people are still here. If you guys do want a resource for a lot of good Vietnam era footage, there's a website, forum board, Reddit. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. The subreddit Combat Footage has a lot of Vietnam content.
Ooh,
Fun to watch.
I did not know that. Yeah, I wouldn't expect the best in context from Reddit, but it's definitely available there.
But yeah, they have a lot of good
Reddit user
footage.
spotted. Uh-oh, look out. We've got you identified as a Reddit user. Well, at least he's not Fortran.
I browse K all the time.
You're not Q, are you?
No. Just a robot.
Just
All right.
All right,
Have
man.
a good day.
Have a good day. We'll see you on Thursday.
Thank you.
That
Bye.
goes for everybody. Take care. And Jennifer, are you still here? Jennifer Estrada? Jennifer Estrada had a question. Yeah, Jennifer, let's see. Jennifer asked, by when do we need the books? You need these books as soon as possible. She sent it privately, but I'm going to answer it publicly because everybody's wondering about it. I want you to have the books to undertake your studying by this weekend. So get online, Google search shop. I know it's not available immediately on Amazon, so try other sources and get it sent to you so you can start reading it and annotating it by this weekend. Ashley, sorry that you are having problems. I'm glad you are here. So apparently it worked out. Combat footage. You won't, Roxana, there's nothing in assignments at the moment, so you may not see it. Wait until I actually put some assignments in there. There'll be the first quiz and the first paper, both of which are due next week. I will post them by the end of this week.
So is there 2 class time starts? One at 7:30 and one at 9?
Yeah, and it's partly an adjustment that goes on. I know this class was originally, is Luke, Luke originally put on at 7:30 in the morning, I believe it was scheduled on Tuesday, Thursdays. I have another class that's supposed to be 8 till noon on Fridays. And I was trying to herd people into my Tuesday, Thursday classes for that Friday class, but it's not working. So apparently I'm going to teach on Friday mornings as well. But our Zoom calls will run from 7:30 on.
On my Canvas, it said that my classes were 8:30 to 12, but I got the email for it saying.
Does that conflict with your schedule, Luke?
No,
8:30?
no, it doesn't.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
But I have another class that teaches on Tuesdays and Thursdays as well, and it's like, well, I wouldn't say, it depends on how long this class is going to go every day.
2 hours?
2 hours every time?
Yeah. No, not every time, but yeah, you should assume.
Well, just like average?
Yeah, 2 hours and 10 minutes is what the schedule for classes always says it is. But that includes breaks and things like that. What time is your other class? Your other class asynchronous?
I don't know what that means.
You don't know what that means. Your other Tuesday, Thursday class, does it meet at a particular time according to the schedule?
Oh, yeah, I know. Okay. Yeah, it meets at, I think, 11.
Okay. Yeah, well, we will generally get you out of here by 11. Generally.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Okay, not a problem, Luke.
Hi. To a similar point, I was also listed for that Friday class, but got the emails for Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about doing it Tuesday, Thursday? Your options are now do it Tuesday, Thursday, or do it Friday morning.
It's not that big of a problem. I just have no idea when my other Thursday class meets. What time? It's just also on Thursday, but I think it's like the time slot is different. And also, are you still doing the 12:30 to 1:30 classes?
Oh, that's not a class, but yes, I am still doing 12:30 to 1:30 as teacher conferences. So I'll post a Zoom thing, and you guys, if you'd like to come and talk to me directly one-on-one, you can do that from 12:30 to 1:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Okay, because I think I have it on my calendar. Because I have my other class does kind of conflict with the Thursday one a little bit if it is still.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, I'd have to show up late to this class because the other one does require to be into the Zoom meetings. So,
Yeah, okay.
because the other one ends at 9:45, so I'd have to be
Oh.
very late.
Okay.
But I can still arrive on Tuesdays. It's fine.
Right. And you're going to be, again, it is asynchronous. There's that crazy word. It means that you can access the materials, the course materials at Canvas or YouTube or Zoom. You can access that material at any time that's convenient for you. Other questions?
Professor Andrade,
Yeah, Drake.
I had the same exact situation, except that my classes start at 8 a.m. and they go to 9:45.
8 to 9:45.
Yeah, and
Tuesday,
it's
Thursdays?
yeah, it's communications class, and I'm required to be in there every morning.
Oh, I'm hearing a lot from students who have this same class.
That's that same class that I'm in.
Probably.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Mhm. Well, until that's all settled, until our schedule settles down, you're probably going to interact with the course materials on your time.
Okay.
The Zoom calls will be live. If you can take part, join late, whatever it is, that's fine. Then you
Okay.
can interact with me, or you can come to office hours.
All right, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no problem, Dre.
Thank you. Have a good day, Professor. I'll
too.
go ahead and look this up on Zoom, on the
Fantastic.
Canvas right now.
Fantastic.
All right, have a good day.
You too. Anybody else have any questions? Step on up. Okay, we'll let this go. Have a wonderful day. I'll let the Zoom call run until we lose everybody. If you want to get my attention, unmute and say something, and I'll come running into the room. I'll be in and out of the room all day, all morning, but this Zoom recording will stop at 11:30 a.m.
Professor?
Yes.
Oh, I had a question about the code you gave me.
Yeah.
What exactly am I supposed to do with it?
You'll go to the registration site where you go to register, and you'll input that code. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but if you go to LBCC counseling, you can Google LBCC counseling and meet with a counselor, and they can take you through the process step by step.
Oh, okay, because it says I'm enrolled, but then like once I click on the class, it says I'm waitlisted. That's why I was a little confused.
Yeah, yes, who knows? I'm sorry. I wish I could be more helpful, Giovanni. But just know that that code is your code. If it doesn't work, we'll give you another one. Try and find some place to input it that will help you officially get off the waiting list. Don't worry, you are in. If we have to add you separately, we will do so. But try and use the code I gave you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, have a nice day.
You too, sir. Ashley, you asked a question?
Yeah, I did. I was wondering what time does this class usually end on the
It's going to usually end around 9:45.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Sure. Thanks, Carrie. We'll be doing this. I see. Hey, Sophie. Triple one, 720. Oh.